In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world rests between darkness and the first trembling hint of light, the ancient cliffs of the American Southwest hold their breath. Their sandstone faces, shaped by millions of years of wind and rain, glow softly in the starlit hush. It is here, in these deep canyons and wide plateaus, that the earliest whispers of the ancestral Puebloans first drift into memory. Imagine yourself standing at the foot of those towering cliffs, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath your fingertips, listening to the faint echo of lives lived long before written words took shape. The air smells of dust, juniper, and the promise of morning. The silence is not empty, is full, vibrant, and alive, as if the land itself remembers every step taken across its surface. Long before the world knew the word civilization, small groups of early hunter-gatherers passed through these very canyons. They were careful walkers, moving with the seasons, tracing the paths of animals, and gathering roots and seeds wherever they found them. These first people did not rush. They watched. They learned. They listened to the way the wind curled around stone and how the river carved its stories into the earth. They slept under sprawling skies where stars glimmered like scattered grains of light, and each sunrise felt like a quiet blessing on their journey. Over time, they came to see this land not as a place to pass through, but as a place where life could take root, a place where families could grow, a place that offered shelter, food, and a sense of belonging that felt written into the rocks themselves. The earliest communities began as small circles of brush shelters, simple and temporary structures shaped by necessity and patience. Families gathered around open fires, warming their hands, telling stories of the land and of the animals that guided them. Their days were shaped by the rhythms of nature, the softness of morning, the heat of afternoon, the cool calm of evening. Slowly, season by season, these shelters transformed. Pit houses emerged, dug into the ground to protect against winter cold and summer sun. These homes were humble but sturdy, thick wooden roofs held by logs, fire pits glowing at the center, smoke rising through small openings like a quiet signal to the sky. Life took on a new shape. Children learned the ways of planting. Elders taught the secrets of tool-making and the stories of ancestors whose spirits lingered in every grain of sand. As the centuries passed, the ancestral Puebloans grew not only in number, but in wisdom. They began to understand the land with a tenderness that only time can teach. They learned how the desert, seemingly unforgiving, held hidden gifts. Water could be found in shaded canyons. Corn, once a fragile guest from faraway lands, could be coaxed into thriving soil. Beans climbed gracefully, and squash spread along the ground like golden suns resting on earth. Their relationship with the world around them deepened into something sacred. Every plant had a purpose. Every stone had meaning. Every bird's call carried a message. Life here became a conversation, one between people and place, between hope and survival, between present moment and ancient memory. Villages grew slowly, naturally, like seeds taking hold in the soil. Families lived close to one another, sharing tasks, laughter, and the weight of hard days. When the nights grew cold, they gathered around their fires and watched the flames dance patterns that reminded them of the constellations above. They believed that the sky and the earth were connected, that their ancestors watched from above and walked beside them in spirit. Children listened with wide eyes as elders described how the world began, how mountains rose, and how the first people learned to speak to the world with gratitude. These stories were not mere entertainment. They were the threads that wove community together, teaching lessons of kindness, courage, and balance over time. These early people settled deeper into the land's embrace. They discovered caves and alcoves carved naturally into cliff school, protective spaces that shielded them from storms and sun. Imagine them stepping inside for the first time. The stillness would have felt ancient, almost spiritual, as if the earth had opened its arms to them. These alcoves became more than shelter. They became sanctuaries. Within their curved walls, voices echoed softly, like the murmurs of ancestors carried on the breeze. Families stored food there, shaped tools, and found moments of peace. In these hidden hollows, life grew richer, steadier, and more rooted in the land's dependable presence. As the community grew, so did the connection between generations. Elders sat with children, teaching them how to grind corn, how to track the footprints of deer, how to listen to the shifting patterns of weather. Young ones learned not only skills but humility, the understanding that they were part of something larger, older and wiser than any single person. The desert, though quiet, spoke with clarity. Its lessons were gentle but firm. Be patient. Be observant. Share what you have. Respect what you cannot change. These teachings shaped not only daily life, but the heart of a culture that would endure for thousands of years. That the ancestral Puebloans lived during a time when the world moved at the pace of nature. Days were long, nights were deep. There was no rush to grow more than the earth could sustain, no pressure to expand beyond what hands and hearts could maintain. Life was measured in seasons, each one a cycle of work, rest, reflection, and renewal. When rains came, they felt like blessings. When droughts settled in, they became teachers of resilience. The people learned to read the land like a book written in wind, stone, and shadow. They followed its guidance with respect, knowing that their survival depended on harmony rather than conquest. Across the centuries, their small communities left hints of their passing stone tools, hearths, broken pottery, and faint charcoal drawings on cave walls. These markings were not meant for fame or remembrance. They were simply expressions of life. A handprint left on the stone might have been a mother showing her child where to place their hand. A drawing of a deer might have been a reminder of gratitude for a successful hunt. A swirl of lines could have represented the wind or the turning of seasons. These ancient whispers, etched in stone and earth, remain even today, calling softly across centuries as the sun slowly rises over the desert. Those ancient cliffs glow with warm hues of rose and amber, as if waking from a long and peaceful dream. The shadows retreat gently, revealing the traces of a people who once walked with quiet purpose, shaping the land even as it shaped them. The story of the ancestral Puebloans begins not with conquest or grand monuments, but with this simple truth: they listened to the land. They learned from it. They loved it. And in return, the land held their memories tenderly, preserving them for those who would one day seek to understand. Here, in this beginning, where the world was simple and every day felt like a gift, you can almost hear their footsteps softly pressing into the sand. You can almost feel the warmth of their fires, smell the smoke drifting into the cool night, and sense the steady rhythm of their beating hearts. Their story unfolds not in loud declarations, but in quiet devotion to the earth, to family, and to the timeless pulse of life. And as the morning light spreads across the canyons, you too are invited to step gently into their world, to listen with an open heart, and to feel the calm presence of this ancient land guiding you deeper into the journey ahead. In the soft glow of early morning, when the sun rises slowly over the horizon and casts thin ribbons of gold across the quiet desert floor, the earliest homes of the ancestral Puebloans seem to awaken with the light. Their pit houses, nestled gently into the earth, breathe out the cool air gathered through the night. The landscape holds a gentle stillness, as if the world pauses to remember the first sparks of community that began here. Imagine standing beside one of these ancient homes as the sky brightens. The air still crisp, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush warmed by dawn. The land feels patient, watching, as though it knows the importance of what is about to unfold in the story of these people, who learned to call it home. These pit houses were more than shelters. They were symbols of settling, of choosing to stay, dug into the ground for warmth and stability. They reflected the intimate relationship between the people and the land that held them. Wooden beams supported roofs made from brush and mud, creating spaces that felt both protected and deeply connected to the earth. Inside, families gathered around small fire pits that glowed softly, bringing comfort during cold nights and calm during windy days. The firelight danced across the curved walls, casting shadows that flickered like ancient spirits whispering lessons from the past. For the first time, people felt the steady rhythm of a life rooted in place. They planted, they harvested, they returned, and little by little, the fires of memory began to burn in every home. Imagine life inside those early dwellings. The sound of grinding stones fills the room as mothers and daughters prepare corn, turning kernels into the flour that would sustain their families. The thump-thump of stone on stone is steady, almost musical, blending with the crackle of the fire and the soft murmur of conversation. Children play nearby, tracing shapes in the dirt or carving tiny figures from wood. Outside, fathers tend to the fields, guiding water toward their crops, whispering thanks to the earth for its gifts. Each day unfolds with a gentle rhythm, shaped by cooperation, patience, and unspoken trust. Communities do not form through force, they form through shared warmth, shared hope, and shared firelight. As the centuries passed, these pit houses evolved. Their builders learned from the land, adapting their construction to the shifting seasons and changing needs. Walls became stronger, roofs became more skilled, entrances were shaped to guard against harsh winds, and as homes improved, so too did the sense of belonging. Villages began to form, clusters of homes arranged around shared spaces where neighbors met to talk, work, plan, and celebrate. The fires that once belonged to individual families now joined into a larger, communal glow. People felt not only connected to the land, but to one another. Together, they grew stronger. Together, they learned that survival was easier when every hand contributed and every heart cared. Trade routes slowly emerged, not grand highways carved through mountains, but quiet paths worn by footsteps and memory. These paths connected villagers to distant places, carrying not only goods, but stories. A stranger might arrive with a new type of pottery or a different way of weaving baskets. Another might bring seeds that grew differently in the desert soil. Each encounter expanded the world of the ancestral Puebloans just a little more. They remained rooted in their homeland, yet they reached outward with curiosity and respect. Through these exchanges, ideas flowed like wind between Masat, shaping cultures and inspiring new ways to build, grow, and create. One of the most remarkable developments during this time was the deepening relationship with corn. This crop was more than food, it was a symbol of life itself. Corn required patience, understanding, and care, much like the community that nurtured it. As people learned how to cultivate it more successfully, their lives changed. They planted not only for themselves, but for future generations. They developed tools to help with farming, created pottery to store their harvests, and shaped new rituals around planting and gathering. Corn became a teacher. It taught them timing. It taught them resilience. It taught them gratitude. And in many ways, it taught them what it meant to stay. As communities expanded, so did the need for gathering spaces where the people could come together to discuss decisions, share stories, and honor the earth. These early ceremonial structures were simple yet powerful. Some were built near water sources, others near fields or under natural rock shelters. Inside, the air felt sacred, thick with the presence of ancestors whose footsteps had walked the same ground. Fires burned at the center, casting light on the faces of those gathered, uniting them in warmth and purpose. These gatherings strengthened the invisible threads that connected the people, reinforcing the belief that they were part of something larger, something ancient and enduring. Nighttime in these early villages held its own kind of magic. Once the work of the day was finished and the desert winds grew cool, families gathered outside their homes to rest beneath the stars. The sky stretched endlessly above them, a shimmering river of light guiding their dreams. Elders told tales of creation, of spirits who watched over them, of lessons learned from the land. These stories were not mere entertainment. They were teachings wrapped in imagination, guiding the young toward wisdom and reminding the old of the beauty in their journey. The people listened closely. They carried these stories into their hearts like lanterns, illuminating the path of life that stretched ahead. Children grew up surrounded by the gentle sound of these stories, the warmth of firelight, and the patience of the land. They learned to weave baskets strong enough to carry grain, to shape pottery that hummed softly when struck, to track animals moving through the brush, and to read the sky for approaching storms. They learned that knowledge came not only from instruction, but from observation. A shift in the wind might signal rain. A certain flower blooming might indicate the right time for planting. A bird's call might warn of changes in the seasons. Life was a constant conversation with nature, and every lesson mattered with time. The people began to leave their marks upon the land, not marks of conquest or destruction, but gentle imprints of presence. They carved small symbols into rock faces, circles, spirals, figures dancing beneath the sun. Some of these symbols may have represented events. Others may have captured dreams or rituals. Still others might simply have been expressions of joy or gratitude. These markings allowed the people to speak across generations, letting their voices drift through time like echoes inside vast canyons. As villages grew and the fires burned brighter, the spirit of community deepened. Nights were filled with laughter, with shared meals, with stories that traveled from one listener to another. Mornings brought new tasks, new challenges, new chances to strengthen the bonds that held them together. There was a sense of harmony, a steady rhythm that threaded through daily life. Though challenges existed, storms, droughts, sickness, the people faced them with courage born from unity. They believed in the strength of their ancestors, the wisdom of their elders, and the resilience of their own hands. Those early centuries were a time of quiet transformation. The people were learning who they were, who they wished to become, and how they wanted to shape their world. Their fires glowed softly against the darkness, a symbol of hope, memory, and belonging. These flames carried the earliest stories of the ancestral people. stories that rose into the night sky like prayers woven from smoke. And as dawn touched the desert once more, the fires of ancestral memory continued to burn warm, steady, and full of promise, guiding the people toward the next chapter of their journey, where new homes, new beginnings, and new dreams awaited them in the unfolding light. When morning settles gently over the canyon walls and the light glides across the sandstone like a soft hand brushing away the last traces of night, the cliffside homes of the ancestral Puebloans begin to glow with a quiet, timeless beauty. These homes, carved into high alcoves, tucked beneath overhanging cliffs, and shaped by careful hands, seem almost to float between earth and sky. They lie suspended in a world where wind and stone have danced together for ages, creating spaces that feel both protected and breathtakingly open. Imagine standing below one of these grand alcoves, looking up at the honey-colored rock rising above you, the warmth of the morning sun spilling across its surface. The air feels cool, shaded by stone that has sheltered countless generations, and for a moment you sense the profound stillness carried by these ancient walls. Long before these cliff dwellings were constructed, the people had already begun shaping their lives around the land's natural contours. They understood the desert intimately, the shift of light through a canyon, the protective calm of an alcove during a storm, the way stone held warmth in winter and soothed the heat of summer. In time, this understanding blossomed into architectural brilliance. They began building not only on the ground but within the cliffs themselves, choosing places where the earth opened naturally into broad curved spaces. These alcoves offered shelter from wind, rain, and relentless sun. More importantly, they offered a sense of belonging, as though the land had carved out rooms just for the people who cared for it. Inside these cliffside homes, every surface held a purpose. Thick walls made from sandstone blocks provided strength and insulation, while small windows and openings allowed light and breeze to drift softly into the rooms. The floors were smooth and cool beneath bare feet. The ceilings bore wooden beams carefully shaped and placed, each one lifted and carried with cooperation and determination. Some rooms were used for sleeping, others for storage, others for gathering. Walking through one of these homes would have felt like moving through a living memory, each room resonating with the warmth of voices, the rhythm of daily work, and the gentle laughter of children. From afar, these dwellings looked like part of the cliff itself, seamlessly woven into the rock's ancient story. But up close, they pulsed with life. In the mornings, smoke curled from small openings as families cooked cornmeal and warmed their water. Children climbed the ladders that connected one level to another, their feet tapping lightly against hand-smoothed wood. Women wove baskets and shaped pottery, their hands moving with practiced ease. Men repaired walls, tended to tools, or prepared to walk down into the fields. Every action, no matter how small, added to the harmony of life suspended between earth and sky. One of the most remarkable features of these cliff communities was the view. From their high perch, families could look out over vast valleys, winding rivers, and layers of mesas stretching to the horizon. Imagine sitting at the edge of your home after a long day, watching shadows drift like soft blankets across the canyon floor. You would hear the wind brushing past the cliff, carrying with it the scent of rain or the distant rustle of animals moving through sagebrush. At night, the stars spread across the sky in shimmering waves, so close it felt as though you could reach out and brush your fingertips against them. In these elevated homes, the people lived close to the heavens, their spirits lifted by the beauty of the world around them. The cliff dwellings were not built in a single season. or even a single generation. They grew slowly, room by room, year by year. Each addition marked the hopes of families expanding or the arrival of new generations ready to carve out spaces of their own. Tools made of stone shaped every block with care. Ladders stretched upward like wooden threads connecting one dream to another. Every surface held fingerprints of the people who built them, hands that worked together, believed together, and trusted in the land's guidance. Living in these homes required cooperation. Paths were narrow, steps carved into stone demanded balance, and ladders required strength and trust. Yet these challenges wove the people closer together. Children learned from a young age how to navigate the heights with confidence, guided by patient hands and watchful eyes. Elders found shaded corners where they could sit, share stories, and watch the rhythm of life unfold around them. Food was stored in cool inner rooms, carefully protected from heat and animals. Water had to be carried from springs below, a task requiring endurance and teamwork. Every movement reflected the unity of a community shaped by both necessity and love, but perhaps the most meaningful spaces within. These cliff dwellings were the ceremonial rooms, places where the people gathered, not only to make decisions, but to honor the spiritual heartbeat of their world. These chambers, often round and built with remarkable precision, felt sacred the moment you stepped inside. Their walls absorbed every whisper, every prayer, every hope spoken softly into the air. Fires burned at the center, illuminating faces with warm, golden light. Songs rose gently, echoing against curved stone as community members offered gratitude for life, rain, corn, and ancestors. These ceremonies were not loud or extravagant. They were quiet, reflective, and full of reverence, a reminder that the world beyond their cliffside homes was alive, powerful, and deserving of respect from their elevated dwellings. The ancestral Puebloans watched the world change with each passing season. They learned to read the subtle shifts in weather, a darker shade in the clouds, a sudden stillness in the wind, a faint scent of moisture carried through the air. They knew when to plant and when to gather, when to travel for trade and when to rest in the safety of their homes. The cliffs offered guidance, as though the very stone whispered truths shaped by centuries of endurance. Imagine the comfort of these homes during a storm. Rain would sweep across the desert in wild sheets, thunder rolling like distant drums, lightning illuminating the cliffs in sudden, brilliant flashes. Yet inside the alcoves, the people remained sheltered, hearing the storm but feeling untouched by its force. The stone curved above them like the embrace of an ancient guardian, its strength unshaken by the wind. Families gathered close, sharing warm meals, listening to stories told by soft firelight, finding peace in the knowledge that their homes were shaped with wisdom and love. As the years turned to centuries, these cliff dwellings became masterpieces of adaptation and harmony. They represented the pinnacle of a relationship between people and land, a partnership built on respect, observation, and patience. Each home, each room, each carefully placed stone carried the impressions of countless lives woven together through time. Even today, these structures stand as quiet testaments to human creativity and resilience. They remind us that greatness does not always shout or conquer. Sometimes it builds slowly, humbly, shaping its world with gentle hands and steady hearts. And so, as the sun sets behind the mesas and the sky turns soft shades of rose and lavender, the cliffside homes fall into shadow. Their doorways darken, their walls glow faintly in the fading light, and the night settles around them like a blanket stitched from memory. Within this stillness, the story of the ancestral Puebloans continues to breathe, carried in the wind, whispered by the stone and illuminated by the small, steadfast fires that once glowed inside these remarkable homes carved into stone and sky. Morning in the ancestral homelands always began softly, with a hush that settled across the mesas and canyon floors like a blanket woven from mist and pale sunlight. In those early hours, when the sky shifted gently from cool blue to warm gold, the fields of corn stood waiting in quiet rows, their leaves trembling faintly in the breeze. The ancestral Puebloans stepped into this calm world with a sense of reverence, knowing that every seed planted, every handful of soil turned, was part of a delicate dance between people, earth, and sky. Here, survival was not a battle, but a rhythm one shaped by patience, devotion, and deep respect for the land that sustained them. Corn was the heart of this rhythm. It stood at the center of every home, every gathering, every hope carried into the seasons ahead. Its tall stalks whispered secrets to the wind, secrets of growth and resilience, of how life could flourish even in a place where rain arrived only in hesitant, fleeting bursts. The people nurtured it with care, watering it drop by precious drop, watching its silk turn from pale green to warm gold as the kernels ripened beneath the sun. This was more than farming. It was a partnership, a bond shaped through generations of quiet observation and gratitude. Imagine kneeling beside a field at dawn, your hands sinking into cool soil that has known centuries of footsteps, prayers, and dreams. You feel its softness, its warmth, its quiet strength. You hear the rustle of leaves as the corn greets the morning wind. You sense the presence of those who tended these fields long before you, their careful hands, their steady hearts, their hopes rising like small lanterns into the sky. In these moments, you realize that each stalk of corn is a story, each grain a memory of all the people who once walked this land with the same devotion that shapes your own breath now. But corn alone could not sustain the people. They worked alongside beans and squash, the three forming a harmony of nourishment and balance. Beans climbed the sturdy stalks of corn, offering protein and enriching the soil with nitrogen. Squash spread low and wide, shading the ground and keeping precious moisture from slipping away into the dry desert air. Together, they formed a perfect circle of life, one that echoed the unity found within the community itself. Each plant supported the others, just as families supported one another. Just as villages relied on shared effort and shared responsibility, water, however, remained the gentle challenge that shaped every planting season. In this land of long summers and vast skies, rain was both a gift and a question. Some days, clouds gathered in thick, hopeful layers, only to drift away silently, leaving the earth thirsty once more. Other days, a sudden downpour swept across the mesas, filling small arroyos and carving new patterns into the desert floor. The people learned to read the sky with careful eyes. They studied the flight of birds, the scent of distant moisture, the faint rippling of heat rising from stone. And when rain finally arrived, tapping softly at first and then dancing across the land in shimmering sheets, the entire village would pause to listen. The sound of rain was a blessing. It pattered against pottery jars, seeped into the fields, slipped between the roots of corn, beans, and squash. Children ran outside to feel it cool their skin, their laughter rising like bright notes of joy. Elders watched from the entrances of their homes, their eyes reflecting gratitude for another season given to them by the sky. After the storm passed, the air held a freshness that felt almost magical, carrying the scent of wet earth and new beginnings. In these moments, the people felt the deep truth of their existence. They did not command the land, they lived with it, listened to it, and cherished its generosity. Daily life in the farming seasons unfolded with gentle routine. At sunrise, men and women walked together toward the fields, carrying tools smoothed by years of use. Their footsteps fell softly along paths etched into the earth, paths shaped by the passage of generations. They worked side by side, clearing weeds, guiding water through small channels, checking each plant with attentive care. The fields were not just sources of food, they were expressions of hope. Every sprout that broke through the soil carried a promise of life, of strength, of continuity for the community. During midday, when the sun shone fiercely and the heat shimmered across the canyon, families rested beneath shaded cliffs or inside cool stone rooms. They shared simple meals of roasted corn, dried squash, and soft bread flavored with herbs gathered from the desert. As they ate, they spoke quietly about the weather, the progress of the crops, the stories of their ancestors. These conversations were gentle reminders that life, though shaped by hard work, was filled with meaning and connection. Children played nearby, learning the teachings of the land not through instruction alone, but through experience. They planted their own tiny patches of corn, eager to watch the green shoots rise. They followed their parents to the fields, imitating their movements, absorbing the quiet lessons woven into every task. In time, they would take their place among the farmers, carrying forward traditions that stretched far into the past, and farther still into the future. As the growing season neared its end, the fields transformed into landscapes of rich color. Corn husks turned golden, beans swelled within their pods, and squash lay heavy on the ground, their skins painted in shades of orange, green, and yellow. The air carried the scent of ripeness, a warm, comforting reminder that the earth had answered the people's prayers once again. Harvest time brought the community together in joyous cooperation. Every hand helped, every heart felt the same gratitude. Families gathered the crops carefully, offering thanks to the spirits of the land and sky for their generosity. When the harvest was complete and stored safely in cool rooms carved into rock, the people felt a sense of peace settle over the village. The fields, now quiet, would soon rest beneath the shifting colors of autumn. The people, too, would rest. They would turn to other tasks, repairing pottery, strengthening homes, preparing for winter. But the rhythm of corn, rain, and earth remained within them, guiding their days with steady reassurance. In the evenings, as the sun dipped behind canyon walls and painted the world in soft amber light, families gathered outside to share stories. The fields glimmered faintly in the fading glow, the whispers of leaves blending with the gentle breeze. Elders spoke of the first seeds ever planted, of seasons when rain was generous and seasons when drought tested their strength. They told of ancestors who learned to thrive in this land by honoring it, respecting it, and trusting that balance would always return. Listening to these tales beneath the vast, star-filled sky brought a deep calm to the heart. You could almost feel the rhythm of life pulsing through the earth, the rhythm of planting, tending, harvesting, resting. A rhythm as steady as a heartbeat and as enduring as the cliffs that surrounded the village. And as night finally settled across the land, the people retreated into their homes, carrying the soft cadence of the day within them. They slept, knowing that tomorrow the rhythm would continue. Tomorrow, the earth would welcome their footsteps again. Tomorrow, the story of corn, rain, and the enduring bond between people and place would unfold once more. gentle as dawn, ancient as memory. In the wide stillness of the desert morning, when the horizon glows with a rising blush of soft orange, and the world feels suspended between night and day, ancient footpaths begin to reveal themselves. Some are barely visible thin lines pressed into the ground by generations of walking, while others wind confidently across mesas, valleys, and riverbeds. These were the trade routes of the ancestral Puebloans, pathways shaped not by force or conquest, but by trust, curiosity, and the gentle rhythm of human connection. Imagine standing at the beginning of one of these trails, the cool breeze brushing against your skin, the faint scent of sage in the air. The land stretches out before you, inviting you to follow the footsteps of those who once carried stories, goods, and hope across vast distances. Trade was not simply an exchange of objects. It was the weaving of relationships. Far beyond the cliffs and fields of their villages, the ancestral Puebloans reached out to neighboring communities, traveling quietly across the landscape with respect for every place they touched. Along these ancient paths, you might have found travelers carrying baskets filled with dried corn, pottery decorated with intricate patterns, or finely woven cotton cloth. In return, they sought turquoise, shells from faraway coasts, feathers from distant forests, and stones that shimmered with colors unknown in their homeland. Each item carried across these trails held meaning symbols of friendship, trust, and connection between people who understood that cooperation enriched all who participated. Imagine a young trader waking before dawn, preparing for a journey across the desert. He would tie his sandals carefully, secure his pack, and step outside into the chilled morning air. His village still slept, save for a few quiet figures already tending to early fires. He would pause for a moment, listening to the wind sweeping across the canyon walls, feeling the weight of responsibility and purpose. Then he would begin to walk. His footsteps would fall softly on the sandy ground, following the path set by those who traveled before him. As the sun rose higher, he would cross open plateaus where the world expanded endlessly in every direction. His journey was not hurried. It followed the pace of breath, the rhythm of heartbeats, and the slow, steady march of human resilience. Every traveler knew these routes intimately. They recognized landmarks shaped by Nakira crooked juniper tree, a rock formation resembling a resting animal, a distant peak glowing bright beneath the sun. These markers were not merely guides. They were companions, silent and constant, offering comfort during long journeys. Along the way, travelers would stop at small gathering points, natural springs tucked between cliffs, smooth boulders offering shade, or sheltered alcoves where others had rested before them. Here, they would drink, share food, and sometimes meet other travelers heading in different directions. Exchanges of stories came as easily as exchanges of goods. A tale of rainfall in one region might inspire hope for drought-stricken fields elsewhere. A description of new farming methods could spark innovation in distant villages. In this way, trade routes carried not only objects but also ideas, weaving together a tapestry of shared wisdom. The trust required for such journeys ran deep. Travelers moved with respect, knowing that each path had been shaped by countless hands and countless lives. They knew that help could be found in villages far from home, where strangers would offer water, shelter, and kindness. This hospitality was not a rule written down or enforced by leaders. It was an ancient understanding, born from the knowledge that survival in this land depended on cooperation. A traveler who received help in one village would offer the same in another. This quiet cycle of giving and receiving formed the backbone of a culture, grounded in unity. Trade also influenced the artistry of the ancestral Puebloans. Potters learned new designs from distant communities, blending them with their own styles to create distinctive patterns that told both personal and shared stories. Basket weavers incorporated new techniques, making their work stronger and more beautiful. Tool makers experimented with stones gathered from faraway regions, discovering new ways to shape their tools for farming, hunting, and crafting. These creative exchanges enriched every village, reminding the people that they were not isolated but part of a vibrant network, stretching across the desert. One of the most treasured items carried along trade routes was turquoise, a stone that shimmered with shades of blue and green, reflecting both sky and earth. The ancestral Puebloans believed turquoise held spiritual significance, symbolizing life, protection, and harmony. It was shaped into beads, inlaid into pottery, or worn as simple, elegant pendants. When exchanged in trade, turquoise was not merely a valuable object. It was a gesture of friendship and goodwill. Its journey across the desert connected people from distant regions, each holding the stone as a reminder of shared humanity. Shells from coastal regions also traveled incredible distances to reach the desert. Imagine the wonder of seeing a shell for the first time in a land so far from the sea. Its smooth, curved surface glimmered with colors that seemed almost otherworldly. Children would trace their fingers along its edges, imagining the vast waters it once lived in. Elders would incorporate these shells into ceremonies, honoring the idea that life reaches far beyond the boundaries of their own world. Such objects carried whispers of distant places, inviting the people to dream of oceans, forests, and mountains beyond their desert home. Trade routes also played a role in shaping community gatherings. When visitors arrived from afar, villages would come alive with activity. Families prepared meals, storytellers shared tales of ancestors, and artisans displayed their finest creations. These moments of exchange strengthened bonds and reminded everyone of their shared place in a larger world. Even after the visitors departed, their presence lingered in memories, friendships, and the new ideas they brought with them. Travelers relied on the sky as their guide. During the day, the sun cast shifting shadows that helped them stay on course. At night, the stars traced familiar patterns across the heavens, offering reassurance and direction. The Milky Way stretched like a glowing path above them, reminding them that even in darkness, there were lights to guide the way. Some believed that their ancestors walked beside them, whispering encouragement and helping them find the safest routes. In this deep connection between earth and sky, travelers found both comfort and courage. As seasons changed, so too did the nature of trade. During warmer months, journeys were longer and paths clearer. In winter, travel slowed, and communities focused inward, preparing for cold nights and storing food. Yet even in these quieter times, the spirit of trade persisted. Travelers carried messages between villages, strengthening ties and ensuring no community felt alone. This constant thread of communication helped maintain peace, stability, and understanding across the region. The footprints left along these ancient paths eventually faded, worn away by wind, rain, and the passage of time. But the spirit of the trade routes, the trust, the cooperation, the connection remained. Even now, as modern eyes look upon the remnants of these paths, one can almost feel the echo of footsteps, hear the soft murmur of conversations carried by the wind, and sense the deep, steady heartbeat of a culture built on unity. As evening falls upon the desert and the last light of day settles gently across the mesas, the trade routes dissolve into shadow, yet their essence lingers, reminding us that human connection has always been the bridge between distant worlds. In the quiet, you can almost imagine a lone traveler walking home beneath the stars, carrying not just goods, but stories, dreams, and the ancient truth that we are all linked by paths older than memory itself. These are the paths of the Ancestral Puebloans, paths shaped by trust, walked in silence, and remembered forever in the soft glow of history. In the quiet hush of early evening, when the sun melts into the horizon and the desert takes on a warm copper glow, the great houses of the ancestral Puebloans rise from the earth like ancient dreams given stone and form. These structures, massive, intricate, and breathtaking in their sophistications, seem almost unreal in the stillness of twilight. Their walls stretch long and high, their rooms number in the hundreds, and their precise alignments with the movements of the sun and stars whisper of a wisdom deeper than time. Imagine approaching one of these monumental homes as dusk settles. The air cools gently, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain, and the sky above turns a deep, endless blue. Then, in that soft quiet, the great house appears, a masterpiece carved from ancient memory, standing steady against the vastness of the desert. Long before these enormous complexes were constructed, the people had already learned to shape stone with remarkable skill. They built homes on plateaus, inside cliffs, and across river valleys. But eventually, their vision expanded. They dreamed not only of places to live, but of places that could gather people, knowledge, ceremony, trade, and spirit into one harmonious space. From this dream, the great houses emerged. They were not simply buildings. They were centers of life, architectural poems written in stone. The most astonishing among them stood in Chaco Canyon, where the land opened into a wide, sunlit cradle of sandstone and sky. Here, the ancestral Puebloans built enormous multi-story structures, some rising 4 and 5 levels tall. Their walls were made of meticulously shaped sandstone blocks laid with precision so fine that modern engineers still marvel at the craftsmanship. Each layer reflected patient hands, steady hearts, and a deep understanding of harmony between material and purpose. Standing beside these ancient walls, you could trace your fingers over the grooves left by stone tools, feel the gentle curves shaped by time, and imagine the echoes of voices that once filled these grand spaces. Inside the great houses, rooms were arranged with care and intention. Small chambers held food, tools, and precious goods brought from distant regions. Larger rooms served as gathering spaces where conversations murmured into the night, where meals were shared, and where trade items were examined with reverence. Long hallways stretched like quiet arteries through the heart of the building, guiding footsteps from darkness into light, from solitude into community. Some rooms were illuminated by sunlight that slipped through carefully positioned openings, creating patterns of light and shadow that shifted with the seasons. The interplay of architecture and nature felt almost deliberate, as if the builders wished to invite the sky into their home. One of the most remarkable features of these great houses was their alignment with celestial events. The ancestral Puebloans were careful observers of the heavens. They studied the sun's path across the sky, the movement of stars through the seasons, and the cycles of the moon. This knowledge shaped the very foundation of their buildings. Walls aligned with doorways captured the first light of equinox mornings, Niches and windows framed the sun as it reached specific points in the year. These alignments were not accidental. They were acts of devotion, honoring the connection between people and the universe above them. To live within such a structure was to live in harmony with the cosmos. To wake each morning knowing that your home moved in rhythm with the sky. Kiva circular, ceremonial chambers lay at the heart of many great houses. These spaces were carved with extraordinary care, their walls smooth and cool, their ceilings supported by sturdy wooden beams. Entering a kiva would have felt like stepping into a sacred womb of stone. The air was dim and calm, lit only by the flicker of firelight or the glow of sunlight filtered through openings above. Here, people gathered not only for rituals, but for reflection, decision-making, and the telling of stories that shaped their identity. Within these circular walls, the world felt whole. Quiet voices carried wisdom across generations. Songs rose like prayers. Laughter mingled with reverence. In these deep chambers, the people remembered who they were and who they aspired to become. Outside the great houses, plazas stretched wide and open, inviting gatherings of enormous scale. Imagine hundreds of people, families, travelers, elders, children standing in the warm desert sunlight as festivals unfolded. Dancers moved gracefully, their steps guided by ancient rhythms. Storytellers spoke of ancestors, spirits, and journeys carved into memory. Traders offered turquoise, pottery, and shells. Children chased one another along the edges of the plaza, their laughter carried on the wind. These gatherings strengthened bonds between communities, weaving a network of unity that stretched far across the desert. Building these great houses required extraordinary cooperation. Stones had to be quarried, shaped, and transported. Timber, often sourced from distant mountain ranges, had to be carried across many miles. Every piece of wood, every block of stone, every handful of plaster represented collective effort. Imagine lines of people passing stones from hand to hand, placing each one with care as walls rose slowly toward the sky. Imagine the pride they felt as the structure took form, as rooms multiplied, as plazas widened and kivas deepened. These buildings were not the work of a day or a season, they were the achievements of generations. The soundscape of a great house would have been rich and alive. Early mornings brought the murmur of voices greeting the sun. Midday echoed with the tapping of tools, the grinding of maize, the laughter of children playing in shaded corners. Evenings filled with story, song, and the soft crackle of fires burning in distant rooms. Nights were peaceful, with the wind sweeping past sandstone walls and the stars shining through open rooftops like diamonds scattered across velvet. Life within these ancient structures was full, not noisy or crowded, but calm, intentional, and deeply connected. But the great houses held mysteries too. Some rooms appear untouched, as though waiting for occupants who never returned. Some passageways lead to places whose purpose remains unknown. Archaeologists have found evidence of ceremonial feasting, musical instruments, painted pottery, and items brought from faraway coastlines and jungles. Objects that tell stories of journeys and partnerships beyond imagination. Yet much remains hidden, carried quietly by the stone, waiting for hearts patient enough to listen. These great houses were more than homes. They were expressions of vision, visions of unity, spirituality, community, and connection to forces larger than oneself. The people who built them understood that life is not meant to be lived in isolation, but woven together like fibers in a strong, beautiful basket. Their architecture reflected this belief. creating spaces that honored both the physical needs and the spiritual longing of the human spirit. As the sun sets fully and stars begin to shimmer above the canyon, the great houses fall into shadow. Their walls glow faintly in the moonlight, their plazas resting in silence, their kivas embracing the darkness like old friends. But even in this quiet, you can feel the heartbeat of history pulsing softly through the stone. The great houses still stand, touching the sky with their ancient wisdom, reminding all who see them that human hands, guided by cooperation, reverence, and imagination, have always been capable of building wonders that endure long after footfalls fade. And so the night deepens. The air cools, and the great houses settle into their timeless watch over the desert, their stories carried gently in the silence. There comes a time in every land when the balance that once felt steady begins to shift, quietly at first, then unmistakably. In the desert world of the ancestral Puebloans, this change arrived not with sudden fury, but with a long, patient whisper. It began with lighter rains, with clouds that drifted over the mesas without releasing their gift, with springs that shrank ever so slightly in the heat of summer. At first, no one believed it was more than a passing season, a minor hardship in a world that had always required resilience. But over the years, the signs deepened. The soil cracked beneath the sun's sharp gaze. The rivers pulled back into narrow channels, and the wind carried more dust than moisture. These were the moments when the people realized that the land, once so generous, was asking for something new from them: adaptation, patience, an unwavering unity. Imagine standing in a cornfield during one of those early drought years. The stalks sway gently in the breeze, but their leaves are crisp at the edges, their color a little too pale. The soil under your feet feels strangely light, as if the strength has been drained from it. You look up at the sky, searching for clouds thick with promise. But instead, you see vast stretches of blue, empty and quiet. The sun presses down with a heat that feels older than time. In that moment, you understand that the earth is speaking, and its message is clear. Change is coming. The ancestral Puebloans responded, not with despair, but with determination. They were a people shaped by endurance, guided by ancestral wisdom, and supported by the strength of community. As the rains faded, they adjusted their farming techniques. They built check dams and small terraces to catch whatever water arrived. They deepened their knowledge of plants that thrived in arid conditions. They stored more food, dried more corn, preserved more squash, and guarded their precious reserves with careful planning. Families worked side by side, sharing tools, stories, and courage. No one faced the drought alone. The entire village breathed together, hoped together, and waited for the sky to open again. But nature had entered a new rhythm, one that favored wind over rain. Storms still came, but they were unpredictable, sometimes fierce, sometimes absent, always leaving the people uncertain. The once reliable patterns of planting and harvesting shifted like shadows cast by flickering firelight. Elders looked to the horizon with thoughtful eyes, remembering old stories passed down through generations. Stories of ancestors who faced hardship and learned to listen even more deeply to the world around them. These tales became a source of comfort, a reminder that hardship did not mean abandonment. It meant transformation. In village plazas, the community gathered to discuss the changes unfolding around them. Ceremonial fires burned with steady flames as leaders and elders spoke of the importance of unity. They believed that the balance between people and the world was delicate, and when it shifted, harmony must be restored not through force but through intention. Songs were sung with voices steady and warm, rising into the evening air like offerings. Prayers were whispered to the spirits of rain, wind, and earth, gentle pleas, wrapped in gratitude rather than demand. The people believed deeply that respect was the foundation of all relationships, even the one they shared with the sky itself. Daily life became a practice of mindfulness. Every drop of water was valued, every seed planted was cared for with tenderness. Every sign from the land, whether a new sprout or a dying leaf, was studied with earnest attention. Children learned early that scarcity did not diminish beauty, it reshaped it. They found joy in small things: a cool breeze at dawn, a patch of shade under a juniper tree, the rare days when clouds gathered thick and hopeful over the canyon. These small blessings grew in meaning, teaching everyone that even during hardship, the world offered moments of comfort and peace. In the midst of these changes, some villagers began to look outward. There were whispers of other regions where rainfall had not diminished so sharply, where rivers still ran with reliable strength, where fields glowed more brightly under the sun. Groups of travelers set out to explore these distant places, returning with news of communities experiencing similar struggles, and others managing to thrive despite the shifting climate. These exchanges strengthened not only trade networks but emotional bonds. The people understood now more than ever that they were part of a vast web of life stretching across deserts, mountains, and valleys. Their stories were intertwined with countless others. Yet despite the hardships, the people did not abandon their great houses or sacred places lightly. For many years, they remained in their ancestral homelands, hoping for the return of familiar rains. They repaired walls, improved water systems, expanded storage rooms, and kept ceremonies alive. They faced each new season with courage. And even as the drought grew deeper, their connection to the land did not fade. It grew more tender, more deliberate, more reflective. They loved the world that had shaped them, even as it shifted beneath their feet. Imagine a quiet night after a long, dry season. The village sleeps, but you step outside and look at the sky. The stars shimmer brilliantly, unbroken by clouds. The air is cool, carrying the scent of dry sage. The silence is profound, but not empty. It holds the memories of countless nights before this one, and the promise of nights yet to come. You take a deep breath, feeling both the weight of struggle and the strength of resilience rising within you. This is what it meant to live in harmony with the land, to accept its gifts with gratitude, and its challenges with steady heart. By the time the drought reached its deepest point, the people had faced years of uncertainty, but they had also grown wiser, more united, and more attuned to the subtle language of nature. They understood that nothing in the world is fixed forever, not rain, not rivers, not the places where families build their homes. Life is shaped by cycles, by change, by movement. And while some may see drought as an ending, the ancestral Puebloans began to see it as a turning point, a signal that new paths, new opportunities, and new chapters awaited them beyond the familiar cliffs and canyons. Even now, when archaeologists walk the remnants of those ancient fields and study the quiet traces of altered rainfall patterns, they feel the echo of a profound truth. The people did not simply endure the drought, they learned from it. They adapted with dignity. They responded with creativity. And they carried forward the wisdom that no hardship can diminish the human capacity for hope. And so, as the winds grew stern and the rains grew faint, the ancestral Puebloans gathered their strength, held tightly to one another, and prepared to follow the next call of the land, one that would lead them toward journeys, both challenging and full of possibility. The story did not end here. It was only shifting, like sand carried by the desert wind, toward the next horizon. When a people who have loved their land for centuries finally decide to leave it, the choice is never sudden. It is a slow, quiet unfolding, a gentle acceptance stitched together by many seasons of reflection. For the ancestral Puebloans, the long drought had reshaped life year after year, teaching lessons in resilience, respect, and humility. But eventually, the whispers of the land grew clearer. The rivers no longer returned to their banks as they once had. Springs that once sang through stone now murmured faintly or fell silent altogether. The fields, though tended with love, began to yield less each season, and in the stillness of many evenings, as families stood beneath star-filled skies, they began to sense that the time for movement had come, not as an escape, but as a journey, one guided by hope, intuition, and the promise of new sunrises waiting beyond familiar horizons. Imagine those final weeks before departure. The great houses, once bustling with voices and footsteps, echo softly with a different kind of energy, one of preparation, remembrance, and quiet sadness mixed with steady resolve. Families moved through their rooms slowly, touching the walls that had sheltered generations. Children traced their fingers along doorways, sensing the meaning of leaving even if they didn't fully understand it. Elders sat outside at dusk, watching the light spill across canyon walls as though memorizing every curve, every shadow, every hue. They knew their ancestors had walked this land with courage, and now it was their turn to carry that courage into the unknown. Preparation for the journey was thoughtful and deliberate. Pottery jars were filled with dried corn and beans. Baskets were woven tightly to protect seeds and precious tools. Water containers were patched, checked, and checked again. People moved through their homes with calm purpose, selecting only essentials, knowing that every step ahead would require strength and balance. Stories were shared late into the night, stories about migrations long ago, about ancestors who followed signs carried on the wind, about how movement itself was part of the great cycle of life. These stories soothed the hearts of those who feared leaving and strengthened the resolve of those who were eager to follow new paths. When the day of departure arrived, it was marked not by chaos but by a profound stillness. The air felt heavy with memory. The sky stretched wide and pale overhead. Families gathered in the open plazas one last time, their faces touched by both sorrow and determination. Leaders spoke softly, offering words of encouragement and gratitude for the land that had sustained them. Then, with the rising sun casting long shadows across the desert floor, they walked away from the homes carved into stone and sky homes that had witnessed laughter, stories, ceremonies, and countless dawns. Their journey took them through landscapes both familiar and strange. They followed ancient paths worn into the earth by generations of travelers. These routes wound through mesas, across dry riverbeds, and along the edges of towering cliffs. At times, the sun burned fiercely, and the sand shimmered underfoot. At other times, clouds gathered, offering shade and the promise of rare rain. Through it all, the people walked with patience and unity, each step carrying them closer to new beginnings. Travelers moved in small groups, each led by elders who remembered distant places from their youth or had listened closely to stories from generations before. They paused at springs that still flowed, gathering water with gratitude. They rested in shaded alcoves, sharing meals and singing softly to remind themselves of home. Children remained close to their parents, sometimes holding hands, sometimes racing ahead with bursts of energy that lifted the spirits of everyone around them. Even in the weight of migration, life continued to offer precious moments that kept hope alive. As the people moved farther from their ancestral homes, they encountered signs of change. In some regions, the land seemed greener, touched by more generous rains. Wild plants grew taller. Rivers carried a heavier song. Birds called from higher branches, signaling places where life was thriving. In these moments, the people felt encouragement rising in their chests like warm light. The world was still full of possibility. The earth, though challenging, had not turned its back on them. Along the journey, they sometimes met other traveling groups, families from distant villages who had also felt the pull of new horizons. These meetings were gentle, marked by cautious smiles that soon grew into warm exchanges. Stories were traded, news was shared, and for a moment, the desert felt like a place of reunion rather than departure. Some groups decided to travel together, their numbers offering comfort and safety. Others continued on separate paths, bonded by the knowledge that all of them were searching for places where life could bloom again. Occasionally, the travelers passed through abandoned villages, places where others had once lived, loved, and eventually departed. These silent spaces evoked a tender ache. Empty homes stood beneath the sweeping sky, their walls still strong but their hearths cold. The travelers approached with respect, recognizing the stories held within those stones. They did not linger long, but these moments reminded them that movement was woven into their history, and that every ending had once been someone else's beginning. Nights along the journey held their own kind of beauty. As darkness wrapped around the land, families gathered close beneath the stars. Fires flickered softly, their glow illuminating faces weathered by wind and sun. Elders told stories of constellations, teaching children how the stars had guided ancestors through countless migrations. The Milky Way stretched above them like a glowing path, offering comfort in its familiarity. The desert, though vast and quiet, felt alive with meaning under the night sky. Food was shared carefully, water was protected, and every member of the group was watched over with love. Those who grew tired received help without hesitation. Children were carried when their small legs trembled. Elders were supported with steady hands. In these acts of kindness, the community strengthened itself. Migration was not a solitary act, it was a collective journey shaped by compassion. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Eventually, the people reached regions where the land spoke differently. The soil felt richer beneath their feet. Streams whispered steadily through green valleys. Trees rose taller, offering shade that felt like a blessing after so many miles beneath open sky. Here they paused, breathed deeply, and felt peace settle into their bones. Some groups decided they had found their new home, a place where they could plant corn again, build sturdy homes, and begin new chapters. Others continued onward, searching for places that resonated more deeply with their needs. Wherever they settled, they carried with them the wisdom of their ancestors, their knowledge of farming, their artistry, their rituals, their stories, and their profound respect for the earth. Settlements grew again, not in the exact image of the ones they had left, but in new forms shaped by the land around them. Children's voices filled the air once more. Fires crackled. Songs rose. The people discovered that the story of their culture did not end with departure. Transformed, expanded, and breathed anew. even today. As we walk the open landscapes of the Southwest, we can still imagine their journey. We can see the faint traces of ancient trails stretching over ridges. We can feel the weight of decisions made beneath star-filled skies. We can sense the courage it took to leave behind homes of such beauty and build new ones with faith in the future. Their journey toward new sunrises was not an ending. It was a testament to their unity, their resilience, and their unbreakable spirit, a reminder that even when the land changes, the heart of a people endures, carrying hope like a torch across the shifting sands of time. There is a special kind of silence that settles over a place once filled with life, a silence that feels neither lonely nor forgotten, but gently suspended, as though waiting for someone to listen closely enough to hear what remains. In the ancient homelands of the ancestral Puebloans, this silence lingers across wide valleys, beneath towering cliffs, and within the cool shadows of abandoned dwellings. It drifts through long corridors of great houses that once glowed with warm firelight. It rests upon stone walls shaped by hands whose names are lost to time, but whose presence is still unmistakably felt. These lands, though quiet now, echo with stories etched into every curve of the canyon and every grain of sand. They remind us that even when a people move on, they do not truly disappear. Imagine walking into one of these empty settlements long after the families have departed. The morning sun touches the stone walls gently, warming them with soft gold. The air feels still, carrying only the faint sounds of distant wind and occasional birdsong. Every step you take stirs a light cloud of dust that rises briefly before settling again, as though the earth itself is breathing slowly beneath your feet. You pause in a doorway once shaped with careful hands. You feel the coolness of the stone. You look at the room before you, quiet, shadowed, serene, and you sense that you are not alone. Not because anyone is there, but because the memory of those who lived here lingers like the fading warmth of a recently extinguished fire. The walls still hold the touch of stories. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the echo of children's laughter bouncing through the rooms, their small footsteps running across smooth floors. You can imagine the soft hum of voices as families ground corn early in the morning, the steady rhythm of stone tools ringing faintly through the air. You can picture the glow of firelight flickering against walls as elders shared stories of creation, journeys, and the deep wisdom of the stars. Though time has carried away their footsteps, the spirit of their lives remains imprinted upon the land. As you step outside into the bright desert light, the valley stretches before you in quiet majesty. Mesas rise in the distance, their shadows long and soft. The wind moves gently, carrying with it the scent of juniper and sage. It whispers along the edges of ancient walls, as though trying to tell the stories that the people once shared here. These echoes are faint, but they are real memories woven into the landscape like patterns carved into pottery. Some rooms inside these ancient structures still hold glimpses of daily life. A broken pot, its surface decorated with delicate lines. A grinding stone worn smooth by years of use. A faint charcoal mark on a wall where a fire once burned. These objects do not speak loudly, but they hold incredible depth. They tell us that the people here cooked meals with love, shaped vessels with care, stored precious seeds of future harvests, and cherished the quiet rituals of everyday living. In these small traces, we find entire worlds. Even the large ceremonial rooms, kivas, carry echoes of gatherings long past. Their circular walls descend into the earth, cool and sheltering. When you stand inside one today, the stillness wraps around you like a soft cloak. You can almost feel the warmth of a fire at the center. See the shadows of dancers moving gracefully to ancient rhythms. Hear the low hum of voices joined in prayer. These ceremonies, shaped by reverence and gratitude, brought people together in powerful ways. And though the fires no longer burn, the sense of sacredness remains, as if the very stones remember. Travelers who came long after the villages were abandoned often wondered why these places were left behind. They imagined dramatic events, sudden disasters, or losses too great to bear. But the echoes of history suggest something far quieter and intentional. Patient departure shaped by respect for the land and understanding of natural cycles. The people did not flee. They moved on gently, carrying with them what they needed, and leaving behind spaces that had served their purpose with grace. In this way, every empty dwelling became a monument of gratitude, not abandonment. Time continued to move forward, and nature slowly reclaimed parts of these settlements. Wind brushed sand into corners of rooms. Rains carved new lines into stone. Plants took root in cracks and crevices. Yet the structures remained strong and dignified. Even in their emptiness, they stood with quiet pride, holding the memories of thousands of sunrises and sunsets, thousands of footsteps and whispered prayers. Their endurance speaks of the remarkable skill of their builders and the deep harmony they once had with the land. As you wander through the quiet village, you might come across petroglyphs etched into rock walls, nearby spirals, animals, figures reaching toward the sky. These symbols act as voices from the past, conveying ideas and beliefs that words alone could not capture. They remind us that the people here lived not just with their hands and their bodies, but with their spirits and imagination. Their stories were recorded not in books but in stone, carried forward by the landscape itself. In the evenings, when the sun sinks behind the mesas, the shadows stretch long across the empty rooms. The silence deepens, but it is not cold or unsettling. It is tender, like a blanket drawn over a sleeping child. The sky explodes with stars, brighter than you ever imagined, casting a gentle glow upon the ancient stones. Those stars are the same ones the ancestral Puebloans once gazed at, seeking guidance, comfort, and meaning. Beneath their light, the echoes of the past feel even closer, as though the ancestors themselves linger in the cool night air, watching over the land they once loved so deeply. You sit quietly on a stone ledge, listening. The wind carries faint echoes that do not feel like memories alone but like invitations, an invitation to admire, to reflect, to learn, to appreciate the resilience of a people who lived in harmony with their world. Their voices may no longer rise in song or conversation, but their legacy remains as steady as the cliffs surrounding you. What we call abandoned is not truly abandoned, it is transformed. These valleys, though empty of daily life, are full of presence. They remind us that history is not lost when a place grows quiet. It continues in the echoes that drift across stone walls, in the stories embedded in the earth, in the lessons carried forward by those who honor the past. Tonight, as you walk away from the silent village and into the open desert, you may feel a sense of connection, subtle but real. The echoes follow gently, wrapping around you like a soft breeze. They are not calling you back. They are reminding you that every life, every home, every moment leaves an imprint. Nothing is erased. Everything becomes part of the greater story carried across time. And somewhere among the stars, the ancestors watch, their presence woven into the vast, serene night, their voices whispering softly through the empty valleys they once called home. There are places in the world where time does not fade, but settles gently, layering itself like soft dust over memories too strong to disappear. In the quiet canyons and wide mesas of the American Southwest, the legacy of the ancestral Puebloans lingers in this gentle way alive, not in bustling villages or echoing footsteps, but in the presence that still breathes through stone, wind, and sunlit silence. When you walk through these lands today, the air feels thick with remembrance. The cliffs glow warmly beneath the rising sun. Ancient walls stand with dignified calm, and the sky stretches endlessly above, carrying whispers of stories that continue to drift through the world long after the people themselves journeyed on. Their legacy is not confined to what they built, but to what they understood, that life is a fragile, beautiful rhythm that thrives when lived in harmony with the earth. Imagine arriving at one of these ancient sites, just as morning light spills across the desert. The air is cool enough to raise a soft shiver, and the rocks beneath your feet feel smooth from centuries of touch. You hear the faint rustle of wind sweeping across sagebrush. You see delicate shadows stretching across stone. And as you stand there, surrounded by silence, you can almost feel the presence of those who once called this place home. Their movements, their laughter, their hopes, their stories, they hover like warm breaths in the air. They have not vanished. They simply changed their form. The architecture they left behind reveals the brilliance of minds deeply connected to the land. The great houses, with their precise alignments to celestial events, still capture sunlight in exact ways during solstices and equinoxes. Kivas still descend into the earth with a grace that feels spiritual, their smooth walls echoing ancient ceremonies that once guided community life. Pottery shards scattered near old dwellings still display delicate patterns, each line shaped by hands that worked with calm patience. Trails once worn into the earth by traders now lie faint but not lost, leading modern travelers to places where turquoise, shell, and stone once changed hands in acts of trust. These lasting signs carry a message. The people here understood how to build not just structures, but harmony. But their legacy is not only physical, it is deeply spiritual. The ancestral Puebloans believed the world was alive with unseen forces. The wind was a messenger. The sky was a teacher. The earth was a guardian. Every crop planted, every story shared, every step taken across the desert was done with mindfulness and gratitude. This worldview shaped their decisions, their relationships, and their daily lives. Even now, as you walk through their former homelands, you can sense this spirit of connection lingering in the quiet. It is felt in the balance of stone and shadow, in the softness of the wind's voice, in the way silence seems to contain meaning rather than emptiness. Their respect for the world continues to teach us, reminding us that the land is not a possession, it is a partner. Descendant communities today, including the modern Pueblo peoples, carry forward this reverence with devotion. Their ceremonies, songs, dances, and traditions are living expressions of ancient memory. They do not view the sites left behind as relics, but as sacred spaces where ancestors still dwell, still watch, still guide. Through their continued presence, the story of the ancestral Puebloans remains not a distant history, but a living pulse. Every prayer whispered into the wind, every offering placed near ancient stone, every step taken on traditional land becomes part of an unbroken chain linking past to present, modern. Archaeologists who study these sites do so with awe. They sift through soil gently, aware that every discovery, no matter how small, a pin's a window into lives lived with remarkable ingenuity, harmony, and purpose. But even as they analyze pottery, seeds, tools, and architecture, they often say the same thing. The most powerful parts of this culture cannot be measured or placed in a museum. They exist in the intangible, in the way the sunrise touches a cliff dwelling just so, in the echoes of stories carried by the wind, and the feeling one gets while walking alone through a canyon shaded by ancient stone. This enduring presence invites us to reflect on our own place in the world. The ancestral Puebloans remind us that life does not need to be loud to be meaningful. They did not build towering monuments or carve their names into stone. They built communities rooted in cooperation. They shaped homes that blended with the earth rather than competed with it. They followed the rhythms of seasons instead of forcing them. And when the land changed, they listened. They adapted with grace. They moved with intention. Their wisdom offers a gentle lesson that strength is found not in domination, but in understanding oneself, one's community, and the delicate balance of the world. As the day stretches toward afternoon, the heat begins to gather, shimmering above the sand. You walk through an ancient plaza, your footsteps soft on the ground. A gentle breeze stirs, and for a moment the smell of sage fills the air with sweetness. You imagine children once playing here, their laughter rising joyfully into the open sky. You imagine families sharing meals, ceremonies unfolding beneath the glow of firelight, traders arriving with goods from distant lands, elders speaking words of wisdom to attentive listeners. These imagined scenes feel alive, not because they are invented, but because the land itself seems to remember them. In the quietest corners of these abandoned places, you may hear something unexpected. Not a sound, exactly, but a feeling. A sense of warmth, belonging, connection. A realization that the people who once lived here understood something essential about being human. They knew that community was not merely a collection of individuals, but a weaving of lives, stories, and shared purpose. They knew that the world offered guidance to those willing to listen. They knew that every sunrise and sunset held meaning, that every season carried its own lessons, and that every departure from home was also a journey toward something new. As evening arrives and the sun sinks behind the mesas, the desert is bathed in soft amber light. Shadows stretch long across the land. The ancient structures glow warmly for a final moment before night gently settles over them. The stars emerge, shimmering in the vast darkness, bright, steady, eternal. These are the same stars the ancestral Puebloans once watched. The same stars they use for guidance, ceremony, and reflection. Looking up at them now, you feel a quiet kinship with those long ago people. Their hopes were not so different from ours. Their dreams, their fears, their joyful were written beneath the same sky. And as you stand there, breathing in the cool night air, you realize something profound. Their story has not ended. It continues in the land. It continues in their descendants. It continues in every person who pauses to listen, to learn, to honor the echoes left behind. The legacy of the ancestral Puebloans is not a closed chapter, but an open invitation to walk gently, to live with gratitude, to build with intention, and to seek harmony in all things. And so the night deepens, wrapping the desert in a calm as ancient as time. The great houses rest in silence. The canyons breathe softly. The wind carries whispers that drift like comfort across the land. Their legacy still lives. It moves through the world quietly, beautifully, like a memory that refuses to fade because it is not meant to. And here, beneath the soft glow of the stars, the story of the ancestral Puebloans settles into your heart warm, steady and enduring, a gentle reminder that some stories never truly end. They simply light new paths, guiding us gently toward the next sunrise.